I got crabs. No, Jesus, not that. I'm talking about the recently released Soulslike action RPG developed and published by Aggro Crab. Jesus. And for those that do have those types of crabs, I heard nothing burns it off better than a little apple cider vinegar. Okay, time to get serious. This is my repulsive review of Another Crab's Treasure. Another Crab's Treasure is a cartoony action RPG that takes elements from the Souls-like genre and makes it into a lovable, crustaceous theme. It's an amazing experience that works as a great entry point for those looking to get into the genre for the first time, or those itching to become the one Sheldon Lord. Get it? Sheldon Lord, Elden Ring, crustacean shells, yeah, okay. It's perfect for those who want to satisfy that little itch before the well-anticipated release of the Elden Ring DLC this month. Honestly, the best way I could describe this game is as if Miyazaki created and developed a game for the Nintendo 64. The game boasts such a unique charm, evident through its story, combat, and characters, that took me back to simpler times, where I had as much responsibility as a hermit crab itself. The story unfolds with a hermit crab boy named Krill, whose shell and home was repossessed by a creditor for failing to pay his taxes. Much to the boy's surprise, who doesn't even know what taxes are. The protagonist's purpose is therefore driven by the hope of recapturing his shell and home and nestle back to the quiet life he once knew. As he ventures forth, however, he soon comes to realize there are menacing and dark things at work that seem to possess much of the sea life, making them hostile. Let the battle for Bikini Bottom commence! This game is much darker than what the reviews and advertisements of the game let on. This is a game that understands the Souls-like genre on a narrative level and delivers a story worthy of its competition. The characters you meet along the way differ through various sea crustaceans and all have an extremely quirky and unique personality that to me really drove the need to keep playing in order to meet more of them. By far the best part of the game is the actual writing, dialogue, and interactions between the protagonist and these characters. It pulled me right back to the Nintendo 64 days, where bubble speech dialogue options present themselves with quirky sound effects to illustrate the characters are speaking. The game reminded me like I was playing old school titles like Banjo-Kazooie or Conker's Bad Fur Day. Fuck, I miss those games. Oh, Banjo-Kazooie? No? Okay. I usually hate playing as a kid unless they're fucking completely mute, like Link. But the main character is absolutely lovable because of how naive and humble he comes off as. The actor did an extraordinary job not being too overbearing or annoying. There are voice acting, but it is limited to major cutscenes, and that's perfectly fine here. The narrative and dialogue is very much for mature adults, and its humor would only be understood by someone who's been, in fact, fucked by taxes by most of their life. But honestly, as you come to get to know me through my vulgar, sarcastic fucking banter, the highest praise I can make a video game is to say it's funny. And this game is genuinely and profoundly funny. Every cutscene, dialogue, or NPC has a great joke. Some of the jokes might hit better with certain audiences, but as someone like me who's completely blunt, every reference had me laughing out loud. The graphics boast 64-bit design, reminiscent of past games on the Nintendo 64, with, of course, significantly more textures and better frame rates. The color and graphic style used is cartoony and helps to bring out a bubbly and childlike tone to the game. These colors, however, transform into bleak, dark grays as you progress further, segmenting the fact that this game really isn't for children at all, even though on the surface it would appear so. The music score is bubbly and snappy, and exactly what you would expect SpongeBob to listen to on his way to work. It may not be the musical score of the year, but it does its job in making you feel like you're on the bottom of the ocean. Just not as deep of a bottom as Titan the Submersible ended up not going. Open world isn't just about making an environment vast. It's about the intriguing locations and set pieces, and the rewards that make them worthwhile when exploring. It's about making the world alive through what you encounter along the way. Now, Elden Ring may set the standard, but I'm happy to report that another Crab's treasure follows. The world may not be as rich as a behemoth in the genre, but the game works within its limitations and creates something exciting. You'll notice that many of the set pieces definitely mimic Elden Ring, such as the deteriorated bridges of Stormvale Castle within the first map, or another area adequately named the Sands Between. What's more interesting is that other locations are connected with each other, right? Sort of like a Metroidvania-style game. Sort of an homage to Dark Souls 1. You can completely wander off and explore new areas or find shortcuts and circle back to where you initially needed to be. As you progress, the maps get more fleshed out with this idea that you can explore other areas, albeit maybe you shouldn't based on the obstacles in your way. Overall, the exploration is fun, rewarding, there's hidden bosses, there's fully missable secret areas, and unique items that make you work to obtain them through either puzzling or platforming. Even if you just go out of your way a little bit to explore, you'll certainly get all the upgrades towards the end. Nothing is hidden completely to the point where it ends up being frustrating and you want to tear out your fucking brain. Similar to Elden Ring, I bet you're starting to see the theme here. You level through the use of runes, or as the game calls, microplastics. The currency is then spent to level up your attributes, which are vitality, resilience, attack, and MSG. Vitality increases your maximum health, resilience decreases damage taken by your shell and improves resistance to status effects, attack increases damage for physical attacks, and MSG increases damage for Unami, which is your magical attacks in the game. The game also has a passive skill tree to introduce new abilities such as parrying, counterattacking, and the ability to do a sprint attack. It also has passive bonuses which you can apply to your shell, called stowaways, and works similarly to how Paper Mario did with their badges, where you can apply a set amount of badges, each with their own slot count, that fit the number of slots you have left. There are various items you can get, one significant one being the ability to grapple. So if you had any aspirations of seeing a crab-shaped Sekiro dashing through the air, then look no further. Other items you can collect can permanently raise your HP and other stats. Other than the usual tropes of attack, dodge, and parry, which we're all familiar with, the game focuses on a new shell mechanic. Each shell or trash that you pick up has a different weight and ability. The weight of the shell determines a couple things. One, how agile your dodges are, and second, how sturdy you are when you're attacked. Each shell has its own armor or defense value that can be reduced when blocking certain attacks. Each shell, as mentioned, also comes with their own unique ability that can help you in battle. Similarly to how ornaments worked in Elden Ring. For example, Shell Shock electrocutes your shell and can paralyze enemies. Party Time allows you to interrupt enemies' actions while also building a ton of poise damage. Juggernaut straight up gives you seconds of invincibility. The list goes on and on. Magic in this world is called Unami, and your magic stat is MSG. Get it? Unami works similarly to mana, and it allows you to use these shell-like magic spells and abilities. Hitting enemies fills the star-shaped bar, allowing you to use these magic spells more often. Lastly, you have adaptations, which are cooldown-based abilities that you gain from killing bosses. In regards to bosses, there is certainly a good variety of them that vary in difficulty, along with enough enemy types to keep the encounters fresh. Albeit, I could have certainly used more. Now, certainly don't expect the game to have anywhere near the level of customization or build variety like Elden Ring. That's definitely not the scope of the game. The game gives enough options, though, that makes combat interesting. Abilities are useful, they're impactful, and there's not a single ability in the game that you can't run in the end. Now, some overall feedback. The combat is great, but can get stale towards the later half of the game, and I found myself kind of sprinting past enemies to get to the next story segment. There wasn't just enough variety of enemies and scenarios that I was presented with that would keep me entertained. That being said, the combat is fun, just not incredible. And again, for what the game is, it's perfectly fine. The camera could especially use some work with the targeting system. I found in narrow platforming sections where there were enemies that when you locked onto them, you would be just spinning around, and that camera ended up being more cause of deaths than the actual enemies itself. Now, it wouldn't be a Souls-like game if the camera wasn't fucked up, so they did good there. The game is also super easy, midway to the end, and not the type of easy that like, oh, I'm just getting better at the game easy. It was, however, really fun to find a combination of spells, shell power, and abilities that made me feel as if I broke the game. I honestly thought I got to a point where I accidentally turned on the assisted features in the game. But maybe that's just because I'm a fucking gamer. I personally played this game on a keyboard, but that's certainly not the intended experience. Now, I personally don't care about this point, but there isn't any epilogue or post-game content or new game plus. Completing the game just sends you back to the main menu, and when you start it again, it just brings you to the last encounter. Now, I would never expect for this type of game to have that type of NG plus content, but it would have been nice to maybe run through the game again with your newfound powers. But for me and what the scope is of this game, I don't mind quick sessions. A wham bam, thank you ma'am kind of deal. I'm getting way too old anyway for second rounds. Shout out to my one pump chumps. There are certain continuity errors in the story, like you would backtrack and see NPCs in the same area, and they would say the same things, even though things in the environment and story changed, which, you know, could break immersion. I was trying to think of crab reference there. No, couldn't. The map and how gorgeously drawn it was, there was no ability to actually pin stuff on it. I would have liked to see more shell abilities. You know, some of the different shells you get have the same abilities, but honestly, there's a ton of fucking shells, and there's more than enough abilities in the game. Also, there were similar stowaways placed all over the map, which kind of limits the incentive to explore. Now, it's easy to nitpick, right, and provide negativity, but these are just the things I've encountered or things I could recommend as feedback. It's easy to sound whiny. Like, if you haven't got the point already that I'm trying to make is the game's fantastic. Get it? Overall, this is my verdict. This is a Souls game for people that are not masochistic. This is a game you could easily recommend to your friends who don't often play action games to give them a taste to the genre. The RPG elements are perfectly lightweight. The combat is satisfying, challenging at first, and grows exactly where it needs to be. The game starts off cute and whimsical, but ends up telling a story with a profound and serious message. If you enjoy Souls-like games and you want to relive those days where you lived in your mom's basement and you were blowing into your Nintendo 64 cartridge, then this is it. This is a game that certainly has a fuck ton of charm and will certainly tie me over before the Elden Ring DLC. This is an absolutely great game, worth celebrating. Celebrating shell crustaceous theme. You get it? Fuck. That's it, jack-offs!